It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Conversations with Joan. Conversations with Joan will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life's Conversations with Joan. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Throughout life, we go on different journeys. Some bring us to wonderful destinations, while others teach valuable life lessons. Today's guest, Julie Evans' coming-of-age story has it all. Sex, drugs, a fall from grace, and a heartwarming turnaround. As a teen, Julie lost her mother and father. A series of choices left her addicted to sex, nicotine, alcohol, and cocaine. Julie made the decision to turn her life around, and today, she works to help people transform wellness into a way of life. Julie is the author of the book, Joy Road, My Journey from Addiction to Recovery. Welcome, Julie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Joan. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Julie, let's begin by talking about your childhood. What did you experience while growing up?
I guess as a child, it's kind of hard to discern that your life is all that different from other people's. But as a child, my life was very different from the neighborhood kids because my mother was an alcoholic, and she was also a very warm and loving and adventurous woman. We come from a Native American background, so her sensitivity to alcohol was even more profound than some people's. And I would have this marvelous, marvelous companion and mentor during the day, and then about 4 p.m, my mother would just disappear into the bottle.
Mm-hmm. And were you an only child?
No, I wasn't. I have a sister who's 20 years older and was out of the house when I was born. And then I have a sister that's 5 years older, and she kind of kept herself hidden away in her room most of the time.
And then when did you lose your father?
When I was 17, maybe about 6 or 7 months apart from one another.
Okay, and then after your parents died, who took care of you? What was your life like then?
Well, Joan, it's interesting because back in that day, there weren't the marvelous resources that we have now. Mm-hmm. So really, who took care of me most of my life was a horse. And his name was Omar, before him, Pogo, and a cat named Heather. And when I say they took care of me, they gave me a purpose, they gave me a place to be, and a job to do. When my parents both died, I, of course, had to let go of my horse also. But in the short amount of time before my mother and I left on a trip, which she ended up dying on, I met a man named Kenny. And when I came back and my mother was dead, we were on a trip in Europe. Kenny was the only person in my life, though he only knew me 2 days before I left. He reached out and asked if he could accompany me in my life, and we became boyfriend and girlfriend, and that was a really great thing for me, but I had to tell my dad that I was living with somebody up in Minneapolis. I had gone up there to go to college. I got to start college very young at that same time, so lots of transitions, not a lot of support, and just kind of mustering bravery more than anything.
Well, and that was a lot of loss that you experienced in a very short period of time. I lost my mother and my sister within 5 months. And so, sometimes, and I don't know if you experienced this, but you weren't sure what you were actually grieving on any given day. One day it could have been your mother, another day your father, and then you were in this new relationship now, and I would assume you were looking for someone to become your family, to take care of you, to fill that void that you had experienced at such a young age.
Yes. And it's funny because now I realize, growing up in an alcoholic family, I actually was looking for someone to take care of, not someone to take care of me.
Right, because that was the role that you were used to.
That's the role, right. And I certainly found that in Kenny, because I didn't know it, but before I met him, he had been a heroin addict. And his family had flown him to Rochester, Minnesota, where I'm from, to enter into a drug rehabilitation program that my father actually sponsored and helped create, which I didn't know either. And I met him after he had gone through the detox and all that, but none of this was known to me until the heroin resurfaced 2 years into our marriage.
And is that when you started using?
Well, I started using drugs really young. My sister, that's 20 years older, lived in Mexico, and we went down there on trips every winter. And the first trip down, I was 8, and they were passing around some kind of marijuana,
Mm-hmm.
and I was busy in the kitchen as an 8-year-old making little Sally Lunn muffins, and they were so popular, and people, of course, had the munchies, and here I was taking care of these wonderful people that were now high as kites. And when we went to leave Mexico that time, my sister said, "Would you take this home with you so Mom can have it?" Because they wanted to see if we could get my mother off alcohol and have her just using marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought home a pound of marijuana in my suitcase as an 8-year-old. I learned how to roll joints. But again, Joan, in those days, it was never to get high. It just seemed the most natural evolution in the world. And again, I want to just say how sorry I am you lost so many people in such a short amount of time. The difference between you and I think, was age. I was 17, and I think you were already...
I was in my early 40s, so yes.
Right. But again, you had sort of sacrificed aspects of yourself to raise your family. So
Yes.
You were still searching for self, as I was.
Well, so you were saying that this seemed to be a normal part of life for you. So when
Yes.
did you realize that you had a problem, that it became more than you could handle?
I guess there were moments as a young girl, as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, because as it went from marijuana, it went into mescaline and LSD, all done in the privacy of my home, all done either with my sister or my best friend, never out in the world that much, never in a party atmosphere, more in a sort of mystical exploration atmosphere. But then I really realized when I came to New York, I rode a bicycle across the country with a girlfriend to get a book published back years ago. And when we got to New York, she went out and tried to get some supplies because I was suffering from a terrible infection. And she came back and she gave me a vial of cocaine that the millionaire that she had met gave her, and I did an enormous amount of it and realized, oh my goodness, this is something I need to kill the pain. I don't know any way other than this to do it. And it just felt so good and so free. And then that was cocaine. And then there's the inevitable backlash when you start, come down from it. So I realized then that I was trying to feed a habit rather than to feed a quest for any kind of higher information or knowledge.
Right. And you already had the addictive gene as part of your DNA.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
anything that you were going to do at that point, you most likely were going to become compulsive about.
Right.
So
And
how did you
when-
heal? How did you
okay.
turn all of this around?
Well, I have a beautiful little home in Woodstock,
Mm-hmm.
and that home was hard won. And that home was won after I had a terrible horseback riding accident in New York City, and I was brought up here to Woodstock to heal, to find my way. And I found my way by creating an animal sanctuary for injured wildlife. I got a pony that needed rescuing, a dog, some goats. It was truly, I was upstairs and I was trying to feed a little baby bird. And as I was trying to do this, my hands were trembling. And I looked down to my right and there was a mirror with lines of cocaine on it. And I just realized it wasn't worth it. No answers were going to be on that mirror. No answers were going to be in that powder. My answers were going to be in service.
So you found a meaning, a purpose for your life. Why do you think you were able to heal when so many other addicts are not able to achieve the type of recovery that you have?
Well, I'd have to give all the glory to God.
Right.
Because whether I grew up knowing God by the name many people call him or not, I have always felt that there was some benevolent force that so cared for me and accompanied me. I could share my victories, I could share my sorrows, but I never felt alone. The problem is that also there's a great amount of shame that I felt from making so many mistakes, from doing so many things that were harmful to me. So, it's an interesting thing to to know there was someone there, but also just so much want to please whatever that creative energy was that gave me this beautiful life.
I don't want to simplify it because it's a very complex issue, but I was just having a conversation with someone, and we were talking about healing from grief, and she was able to heal from her tremendous loss and grief because she found meaning in all that she was experiencing. You found meaning for your life. Do you think it could be as simple and as complex as finding a purpose for your life? Do you think people use because they just feel like there's nothing for them?
You know, I think on the thought level that might be what it is, but I like you have so brought to our awareness, we are multifaceted, and on an emotional level, I think it's a hole. You know, it's an emptiness. And maybe intellectually we all want a purpose, but I think we already do know that we all have a purpose, which is to take care of ourselves and to take care of others.
If you could offer advice to a family member that is struggling with an addicted loved one, how can that person best help the addict?
I know that whenever I try to help anybody, because I'm a recovery advocate for healthcare as a human right, which is a free alternative health care clinic some friends and I created many years ago up here. And we offer health care to people that can't afford it. And I think that what I would say to somebody who is dealing with somebody who is in active addiction, I think you have to really just fill yourself with peace in whatever way you can so that your peace isn't shaken, so that your presence with this person is one of just inner peace where you feel balance. I think when we put too much energy into somebody else being a way that we think they should be, we're sort of buying into their story. And what we want to do is we want to help them take a step back. One of my friends, who was a great mentor to me, said, just imagine that you're up in the balcony and you're watching the performance of your life. So you're up in the balcony. You're also the one on the stage living the life. But you've got that certain objectivity. So as a person that loves someone that's in addiction, see yourself as that person that wants to help that person and as that person that's helping that person. And if you can, see yourself as that person. I know that a lot of people just need to be heard, they need to just speak their truth. For me, that was very important. I found that in a pastor up here in Woodstock, and he listened to me tell my stories. And he said, why don't you just write down your earliest memory? And this was when I was just trying to quit smoking cigarettes. Mm-hmm. So I started to write down my earliest memory, and that's the first paragraph in Joy Road, My Journey from Addiction to Recovery. I used my writing of my book to help me learn how to help people. So, I think every case is different, Joan. If I got to sit with that friend of yours, I would come up with a solution that was very tailored for them.
What was your recovery like? I know that it had to be a very difficult journey for you. Can you share a little bit about what you experienced while you were healing?
Yes, I can. When I was at the height of using cocaine here in Woodstock, at this house that I live in, that I care for very deeply. It's written about in Joy Road. It wasn't a glamorous place to live, but it was a place that I could call home. And the cocaine had threatened my security here. And a friend of mine from New York, who's also written about in this book, came up, found me in this condition, and literally took me from the house and locked me in a room in New York City and took me to healers. He took me to an acupuncturist. But what I realized, he took me away from that which I cared for. I had animals here. Thank goodness I had a friend that looked after them. But more than anything, I wanted to get back to that place I had found, that safe place I had found and threatened with my own behavior. And in that 2-week period of time, and getting treatments and drinking olive oil and lemon juice and garlic and cleaning out my liver, what really worked was I was scared to lose that which I loved. So I think it was an act of will, a daily act of will, because in my opinion, like you know, we are all recovering from something. And though we may have made it far down the road from 20 years ago, we're still recovering parts of ourselves that got left behind somewhere.
Have you done the work to heal that child within?
Yes, I did a lot of wonderful work with great techniques. I've done a lot of deep inner work.
Is it still a daily struggle for you?
I wouldn't call it a daily struggle. I would call it a daily joy. I really enjoy taking care of myself, and I enjoy watching parts of myself wake up and other parts that maybe weren't that positive. I like seeing them diminish and dissolve as I find ways to be stronger and more positive.
Tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing today to help people stay well.
I'm a massage therapist in Woodstock, and for me, having an hour with a person and having that contact with not only their story that they say with their mouth, but the story that their body holds is very different oftentimes. So I get to listen to what their somatic memories are, and I get to listen to what their words are and help them weave together remedies for the rest of the day, or maybe even the rest of their life. I use words. Words are very important to me, and I've been making inspirational posters just that are prayers and uplifting. I think that words kind of are little torches that can light our way. And I just recently created these little kingdom cards, and it's a little box with phrases I've been collecting during my recovery. Step into your promised land, prepare to prosper, receive your miracle, stay sweet, enjoy being you. Those kind of things that so often as I read about you and as I learn about you, I realize that, you know, you tell people to curb their emotions and eliminate excuses and learn to collaborate with others. Those are the kind of things that I think really help people grab something positive and maybe change their attitude, because I think when we change our attitude, we change our altitude. And again, it brings us back up into the balcony where we see, yes, I can help myself. I can do better today.
What would be a takeaway from this conversation? What would you like to leave our listeners with?
I would like to leave your listeners with a great deal of gratitude. Anybody that tunes in to listen to your program is somebody that's either gone through something or knows somebody who has gone through something. And they're filling their hearts and their minds with wisdom. So I just say be encouraged and know that there's people out there that are praying for you. So I just hope that really the glory and the grace that so exists to support us is felt by everyone, one word at a time, one step at a time, one choice at a time.
The book is Joy Road, My Journey from Addiction to Recovery. If you would like to learn more about Julie and her work, you can visit wordsbyjulieevans.com. That's wordsbyjulieevans.com. Or as always, you can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read our digital magazine, and be sure to sign up for our mailing list. Julie, thank you so much for joining us. Your story is so inspiring. So thank you for your work, thank you for sharing, and thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you, and God bless you.
This is Conversations with Joan. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.